good. Looks good. I have like no service on my phone right now, so. Hi, hello. Hello, France. It is very hot in Chicago. It's starting to cool off a little bit, but my God, it has been a scorcher today. What's up, TT? Okay, so a couple things. I've been on that tour, have fun, it's amazing. I hope this works. That's the thing with IRL streaming is it's always like, fingers crossed, I hope this works. I'll try my best. So one, I have pretty shitty service on my phone right now. So that's what I'm running like solo live view and IRL run off of. So hopefully I can hold on to enough service or there's Wi-Fi on the boat. The second thing is I hope they let me stream. I'm kind of just gonna be in the back. I'm gonna set the camera up so it just shows you guys the tour. How much do we want to bet her phone dies? Okay, I have 53% right now. I think it should last me. I did come during the hottest week. I know. I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm going back to LA tomorrow, so I'll be live. If this doesn't work out, I'm going to be live back in LA tomorrow. But I just wanted to try to get this done. Yeah, so that's the plan. I'm just gonna like try to do this, show you guys Chicago. I've actually never done this before. I'm kind of being a little bit of a tourist today. I'm with my parents and my sister. They've all done this and they said it's amazing. So we go along the river and see all of Chicago. Oh, I don't know if you guys can actually, we'll see it once I get up, but Trump Tower is literally right behind me, just staring at me. The gigantic Trump letters. We're in a heat advisory here in eastern Iowa. Well, I am pacing out of Chicago tomorrow. It's gonna be like high 90s in Chicago all week. All right. Will we see Mama and Papa Can this stream? You'll see my dad. My mom is always like, oh, I can't be on camera. But then she wants to talk. Like, she'll talk a lot. But she's always like, I can't be seen. Don't show me. All right. Anything else? Anything else? Tell them I love them. I will. They love you too. Show us Fartlet. If I had Fartlet, I would show you. I don't have him. I went into Will's stream and I was the most annoying chatter last night, asking over and over again to see Farley. I was that chatter. I even donated subs because I don't know how to do TTS. I donated subs to try to get his attention. I just needed to see the boy. Mama Kwan does not want to be seen or perceived. Yes, but she wants to be heard. She does. Okay. I probably gotta get up and head over to the boat. All right. We're gonna go on the move. Hopefully this doesn't break. Like I said, IRL streams are always fingers crossed. I also am I'm lugging the big ass camera and my big ass tripod. Like it is not light. What time is it there? It's 7:18. Still a lot of daylight, still hot as balls. also gonna try my best. I'm gonna try to make it seem like I'm not streaming, you know what I mean? But I'm just like vlogging or taking video. All right, you guys ready to see Trump? I don't know if you can see in the distance. There it is. There it is. I'll show you when I get closer. Good call, streamers are weird. Yeah, I just don't want to be obnoxious. I always have like anxiety when I IRL anyway. Adakemi, thank you for the 12 months. I just get the IRL anxieties. You're like, oh. Okay, where's my family? I see, here I come. We'll try to be extra quiet so people don't know we're here. Yes, everybody. Hi. Hello. Hi. You look so good. Teresa's here. She wants to say hi.
Teresa?
Would you deem to say hello on camera really quickly?
Is she here? Where?
She's in chat.
Oh, yes. I thought you meant she's in line here.
Say hi to Teresa.
Hi, Teresa.
Hi, Teresa.
She popped in. She says hi. Said to tell you guys she loves you. Sorry. I'll just keep this on me for now. Yes, I'm showing everybody the architecture tour, but I'm gonna pretend like I'm not streaming. Like I'm just vlogging.
Personal vlogging.
Yes. Just, but Teresa says slay Liz.
Did she say slay mom?
Duh, of course, slay mom is a given. She said you all look amazing.
Does she have her glasses on?
Yeah, she has her glasses on. You're so silly. Okay, so the plan is to... Oh God, everyone's already sitting in the back?
You're going to have to
I can kick him out.
No,
You can go on the side, Kelly.
I can go on the side? Okay. Yeah, I need to be on the side. Why is everyone sitting in the back already?
Because they knew you wanted it.
Damn
I'm actually
it.
surprised everyone was lined up this early. It's like what people do.
Everybody is lined up early. Man, okay, so my plan was to sit in the back. People are already sitting in it. Not doing front row. Or I gotta be on the side. Fuck, but I have my whole, let's see, tripod. Just gonna put it on your arm. Just put it down here for a sec. Is it just 4 kwans? Yes. Okay, I'm gonna hold the camera at the ground as we're loading so it doesn't look suspicious. No free feed, no free feed. Here, I'll show you. Swag, never upset. Okay, back left. I see it. You see back left, kind of?
You're going to have to be on your own, probably.
It gets really hot on top too, though, especially with the sun. Oh my god.
Oh, there's also the front.
Yeah, there is the front, bud.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry. You're good. Wherever, maybe the front. Yeah, maybe those 4 seats back there.
Welcome any bags, guys.
Yes, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to show you guys. This is what we're getting on. Because you have loose cables. I was like, I know. I think the front is there's... Let's see.
You're not going to go upstairs?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, go upstairs.
Why don't let's scout? Why don't you guys maybe check upstairs? This looks pretty good. I think this is good. Are you happy with this?
What do you think if you want to scope it up upstairs?
I'll do every. I think Dad's scoping out upstairs.
Like these four?
I don't know. Maybe upstairs is better. Okay. I'll go check upstairs. Excuse me? Sorry.
Was there one over there? Thank you very much.
I just don't want to I don't want my tripod to be in the way of people. I think downstairs might be better. Well, if I have it set up like this, that it won't get in the way.
Well, I don't think so. During the cruise, there's people walk up and down. Just wondering if a tripod was getting away.
Some people will, but they can also walk that way.
Okay. And I mean, I guess it's gonna be like we'll be passing.
We go back and forth everywhere.
Okay. Let's do this then.
You're right here.
Yeah, I think this is good.
Okay.
Oh my god, I'm dripping in sweat already.
Oh, that's way better than it was.
Holy moly.
Mom, we're up there.
You're going down. Down that way.
All right, gang. Set. Holy moly. Is there live music or something?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome aboard the Leading Lady. My name is Alex. I'll be your captain for the next 90 minutes. Who's ready for this architecture tour today? Wow. You know what? I don't even think I need to do this a second time. I think that was great. Wonderful. All right, just before we get started here, there are a few safety precautions I need to go over. First of all, this is a U.S. Coast Guard inspected vessel, thus we have life jackets in case of an emergency. The life jacket can be found in this phony baloney black smokestack right behind the pile house. It does not emit smoke, but it does emit life jackets if we need them. We also have these white life jacket boxes on either side of the pile house and way in the back behind everyone's seats on the top deck. If you're on the first deck today, we have life jackets under the bench seating in the front, and as you make your way into the salon area, look to the port side of the vessel, you'll see a closet that's also filled with life jackets. In the event of an emergency, a uniformed crew member will assist you in donning a life jacket, but that's not going to happen today. Anyway, besides that, folks, we do have a few rules on board the vessel. There's no standing on the seats, no leaning over the edge, and there's absolutely, positively no smoking of any kind whatsoever, whether it be cigarettes, vape products, or that third substance we're not supposed to talk about. In addition to that, folks, we do ask that if you're having a private conversation amongst yourselves or taking a personal phone call, please go down to the salon area to continue that conversation down there. Also, while the boat's moving, be careful coming up and down the stairs, and please watch that raised threshold on your way to the bar. It'll get a little bit taller with every drink. Speaking of drinks, by the way, we do have specials at the bar. Our special is going to be a leafy lemonade or a Pilsen Paloma. We also have beer, wine, juice, soda, snacks, bottled water, sunscreen, sunglasses, and hats are also available, as well as a few other merchandise items that I'm going to let you check out when you go down there. In addition to what you can find down at the bar, and also say hi to Wendell, our bartender. He gets a little bit lonely sometimes. Say that I sent you. We do have restrooms to the right side of the bar as well. They're going to be open up until the last, or actually, sorry, they're going to be open for the entirety of the cruise. Don't worry, this is the last cruise of the night. Sometimes I mess up, but don't worry about that. We do have AC also running full blast in the cabin, so if you feel like you need to go down there for a drink of water or to get reacquainted with the cold, please do so. It is a scorcher today. It is going to be hot like this for a little bit longer, so please feel free to get up at any time. This is not a lecture or anything. And you can hear the tour from any part of the boat besides the bathroom. That would be a little bit invasive, but we don't do that here.
Can I have a...
And now, at this time, I'm going to pass the mic off to our docent, Joni. She's a volunteer docent from the Chicago Architecture Center. And you're in good hands, folks, ladies and gentlemen, tonight, because she is one of the best around. So give it up for Joni.
Hello. Are we hearing this? Are we good in the back? Alrighty. Sorry, I had to run away from my brochure stand. Welcome to all of you tonight. Look at all these people braving the warmer weather, but this is the best part of the day, right? We're going to love this cruise tonight. My name is Joni, and I am a volunteer with the Chicago Architecture Center. But maybe more importantly to you guys, I'm also a Chicago native. Third generation, was actually born a couple of miles from where we're standing right now. And as such, I'd like to congratulate those of you who decide to take some of your time in Chicago to spend on the Chicago River. Because this truly is the best vantage point to see the skyscrapers in the city where the skyscraper was actually invented, right? You may not realize this, but this little river is actually how our very first non-native residents arrived here in Chicago. Now, they had to work a little harder than you guys are going to work today. They had to paddle their boats, and a couple of other things have changed since back then. This city started out as a fur trading outpost. And of course, today it's a center for architectural innovation, among many other things. The river, once the people settled here in large numbers, the river turned into a stinky industrial dumping ground. Thankfully, that is no longer the case. Now it is a magnet for upscale offices, hotels, restaurants, residences, and in a wonderful full circle, paddlers again as well. I'm guessing we're going to see some out there tonight. Nothing stays the same in Chicago for long, and the least of which is this river. It has been widened, it's been straightened, and it has also very famously been turned around. Now, we're going to talk a little more about that up north on the north branch of the river, but when I turn around right here where we're sitting, I see a very tall, bluish building with some gray bands, and to me that is a bit of a symbol of that constant change on the Chicago River. It's only been there since 2009, and it was constructed on the site of an iconic building that was there my whole life until that point. That was the Chicago Sun-Times building. I mention that for two reasons. The first is I'm an old newspaper reporter, so I like to point out the newspaper sites on our tour. Well, I have people on board who know what a newspaper is. Yeah, not sure how long that will be. The other thing is newspapers have long been considered our first draft of history, and you cannot avoid history when you are on the Chicago River. In fact, where you're sitting right now is the scene of some of the earliest history in the city that the Native Americans called Chicago, after the stinky wild garlic that grew on these riverbanks. So I get that that's not the most flattering origin story you've ever heard, but like everything else you will ever learn on any Chicago Architecture Center tour, it's 100% true. We're named after a stinkweed. Nothing we can do about that at this point. But some of that history that I'm mentioning, look on your right, kind of this whole area to your right around where the Fidelity sign is. That is where our first non-native resident, Jean-Baptiste Pointe du Sable, and his Potawatomi wife, Kitinawa, that's where they settled in the late 1700s. They built their home there. They also had a trading post. They had a hotel for the fur traders. They had crops. They had animals, they really had quite a spread right here on your right side up and down along the river. The bridge behind me, the first one we're going under, named after them. Again, that was the late 1700s. Another piece of history right here where we're sitting is on the far side of that bridge. Kind of this whole area to your left was the site of Fort Dearborn. That was a military outpost that was settled there by our president at the time, Thomas Jefferson. He figured we had to defend this westernmost point of our young country, and he could see into the future just a bit. He had an idea that this little village would eventually be something because of its location. You could get a canoe, a kayak, from the Atlantic through all the Great Lakes, come down this little river, almost to the Des Plaines River, which runs into the Illinois, the Mississippi, and down into the Gulf of Mexico. I said almost because there was a 6-mile stretch that was too shallow even for the canoeing and the kayaking explorers, so they had to portage or carry their canoe that 6 miles. So fast forward a bit, the federal government finally built a canal there in 1848. Now we had an inland shipping route. You can get an actual ship from New York into the Great Lakes, down all those rivers, right to New Orleans. This was now an inland shipping route. Chicago was a perfect location, right about in the center. All kinds of industry sprang up on these riverbanks to support that new shipping industry. And the rest, as they say, is history, right? We're going to talk more about that history a little farther down the river. You guys are here to talk about architecture, and we're going to be doing that in about 20 seconds. But if you forget everything I tell you today, and I hope you don't, but you're going to forget some of it. If you forget everything else, remember this. This little river is one of America's greatest waterways because it very literally created the city of Chicago. That 6-mile stretch that I mentioned, that is one of only 2 National Historic Sites in the state of Illinois. So, that tells you how important that is. But what's important to all of us today is architecture. That is our middle lane, and that's what we're going to mostly be talking about today. We're going to talk about different styles of architecture, so let's start right off with a modern building. Several of those today. I'll look to your right where that Fidelity sign is. That tall steel and glass building, dark color, that is your typical modern building. They were invented by the architect, Mies van der Rohe. He was the one who said, God is in the details, and less is more. His buildings were less, right? No ornamentation, just steel and glass right there. That's one kind of architecture. Look up a little bit to your right, see that white building? That has the clock tower. That is the Wrigley Building. The Wrigley Building was completed in 1921. That was 1 year after the bridge behind me was completed in 1920. There was really not much on that side of the river in those days because the bridge had not been built yet. So that was quite a successful office building, and they added on that section to your right in 1924. The Wrigley Building, designed by Graham, Anderson, Probst, and White. We got another building here. Let's look. Let's see. How about to your right? Just a little ahead of the Fidelity sign is a short building, right? It's got a silver roof and it's very transparent. You guys see that little building? That's the Apple Store. It's been there since 2018. Designed by Foster & Partners of London. That is the first Foster & Partners design that we have here in Chicago. We're very happy to have it. We're very happy it's right across the dock from us because it's a beautiful building. Look at the roof. It is constructed of carbon fiber. It is also about 3 feet thick, and it may look somewhat familiar to some of you. How many of you have a Macintosh or a MacBook? Yeah? Does it look like the top of your laptop? That's what it's supposed to look like right there. Great place to sit and enjoy the view, especially on a day like today when you need a little bigger conditioning, right?
Oh my god, this
Okay, as we pull out,
such
you're
a
going to
pain
see
in
the
the
very
ass.
first bridge we're going to go under today. Again, that was named after Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable.
There we go.
His wife.
Wait, no.
And that was completed in 1920. Was designed by Daniel Burnham, our famous architect and city planner, as well as Edward Bennett. Daniel Burnham loved the Beaux-Arts style of architecture. Beaux-Arts is that style of architecture that comes from Europe. It's got columns. My goodness. All right, we got to pause for that for 20 seconds. Again, Beaux-Arts is the style of the bridge houses on that bridge ahead of you. Beaux-Arts style is the style from Europe, very popular back in the day. It's even popular here in the U.S., mostly in some of our older buildings, like museums and post offices and that type of thing, right? City halls. So that is the Beaux-Arts style. It's got those very stately columns and lots of ornamentation on the building. And a great example, besides the bridge of the Beaux-Arts style, you're going to see as we start moving along here, up ahead to your left, that concave building with the really pretty top. You guys see that? That is the London Guarantee and Accident building. That has been there since 1923, designed by Alfred Alschuler. And it is a Beaux-Arts style. Again, that European style, very ornamental. You can see the columns at the top. You can see the ornamentation. You will see the same type of columns on the bottom of the building as we get a little closer after we go under the bridge. Look at the very top. We can call that a cupola. You can call it a belvedere. You can also rent it by the hour if you have a special occasion or perhaps a question to pop. That is available for you. The other thing that's up there, by the way, is a 3-story rooftop bar that I would highly recommend. Okay, we're going under the first of 24 movable bridges that we are going to be going under today, just today on our cruise. This is a trunnion bascule bridge, as the rest of ours are, but that one's a double-decker, double-leaf trunnion bascule bridge, the first of its kind ever constructed. Now look to your left, you will see the rest of the London House building. London House is its name now. It is a hotel. It has been just for a few years. A beautiful hotel. It used to be an office building. You'll see all that ornamentation on the bottom.
Oh my God.
And on the top. But
Yeah,
you
the
don't see any in the
tripod was
middle,
just, like,
right? It's very
breaking.
plain in the middle. Back in the 1920s, that was very common in early Chicago skyscrapers. Fancy on the top, fancy on the bottom, and very boring in the middle. 3 parts, tripartite. That was something that you will see if you walk around the South Loop. Look at some of those buildings. You may notice a lot of them have that organization, that tripartite. Okay, as we move along, you'll see London House, when it turned from an office building to a hotel, they did add that very contemporary looking section. And a couple buildings down, the modern building that says Royal Sonesta at the top. Not a typically exciting building. It's a modern building. It was constructed around 1960, but I pointed out because it was in a movie. It was in The Dark Knight. It was Bruce Wayne's apartment was actually the penthouse up there.
Play.
So take a good look at it and then go home and rewatch the movie, right? Okay, we're going to go under the bridge, but look to your left. You see a building with a dome on the top and 2 smaller domes on the front. You'll be able to see it again as we go under. The 2 smaller domes actually have identical domes behind them. You just can't see them. There's 4. And back in the day when that building was constructed in 1926, those small domes had water in them. Chicago was pretty careful about fire. You might have heard we had a big one in the 1870s. We'll talk about that later. But this is the Jewelers Building. It was designed by Yever and Dinkelberg, and they called it the Jewelers Building. That was an aspirational name. They were hoping that jewelers from nearby Jewelers Row would move into that building. Turns out they really did not. So it was bought, the naming rights was bought by the Pure Oil Company, but the building has JB all over it, so we still call it the Jewelers Building. Okay, as we go along here, as we come out from this bridge, look to your left, and you will see a building that almost looks plaid. It has little silver pieces in the middle of it. That is the home of Tony the Tiger and the Pillsbury Doughboy, otherwise known as Leo Burnett Advertising. That building has been there since 1989, and it is a great example of postmodern architecture. I told you modern architecture was less is more, right? So the idea in postmodern architecture, it was a reaction to the modern movement. Less is a more. So there's more color, there's more going on, right, than those simple buildings in the modern era. And if you look a third of the way up, see how those windows are a little different, and they pop out at you at the height of the two neighboring buildings. That's what postmodern architects call context. When they design their buildings, they don't design in a vacuum. They design for that particular piece of property, and they want it to kind of speak to the neighborhood. There's a really good example of that just up ahead to your left. Just at the very end of this next bridge, on your left, you'll see it says Flight Club. There is a green light right now going at the stoplight. Tall building, very shiny, with cutouts on the front and the side. Gary Handel is the architect of that building. It was completed in 2014. 2014 was quite a turning point on the Chicago River. And what Mr. Handel said, those cutouts on the building, they are meant to reflect the fact that this building sits on the Chicago River. That is the meandering river that he has designed on there. And he said because the building sits on one of America's greatest urban spaces. That was not a compliment this river heard very often before that. 2014 was really quite a turning point. And right next door to Mr. Handel's building, you see a much older building. There's a single flag lower down. And it kind of looks, if you look at it carefully and use a little imagination, it kind of looks like an armchair or a throne, right? That building's been there since 1930, designed by Halliburton and Root. And the reason it looks the way it does is because the city of Chicago got a little concerned about all these tall skyscrapers that were new in the early parts of the 1900s. So what they said was, you can build tall on your property, but only on 1/4 of the property. The other sections of the building needed to be lower so the rays of the sun could get down to the sidewalk and we didn't have a city made just of shadows. Maybe today that might have been okay, but a lot of days we're very happy to have the sunshine. Check out this building on your left. It is taking up the entire block. And compare the first 2/3 or 3/4 of it to that last section. This building was built in two sections. 1927, the Builders Building was finished, Graham, Anderson, Probst, and White. And you can tell, right, that's a Beaux-Arts style building. You've got columns and ornamentation. They added on to this, Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill did in the 1980s. So you're talking 60 years later. Total different style, right? That is a modern style. No ornamentation. They use the roof, that glass roof, to pull the old and the new together. And they use the same proportions on that new section to make the whole building look like it could have been constructed all at once. I'm sure you've all seen awkward additions to buildings. That one really is pretty seamless. Just a beautiful job by Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill. Okay, right now we're in a section of the Riverwalk called the Jetty. Our Riverwalk has different blocks. They all have different names and kind of different vibes. The Jetty is all about this greenery, right? They are trying to get marine life back to the river, which has been quite successful. So here we have some greenery. It's a very relaxing block. You even have docks for people to fish, and they do fish here. But notice that little box hanging in the corner. That's a little odd, right? You've got that gray box hanging. The shiny stuff in the middle, it is a projector. It projects art onto this large building on the right that we'll talk about later. It's called Art on the Mart, completely free. Come come on over tonight. Usually about 8:30 and 9:30. It might be a little later now that we're getting dark later, but check it out, artonthemart.com. People gather on the jetty, see a free public art show, and you can hear the music on
We
your
love
phone
free art.
along with it. Really, really a fun free
Yes.
evening.
A lot of people hanging out.
Okay, right now we are in Wolf Point. The Chicago River looks like a capital letter Y. So we've been coming up the main branch, like the long part of the Y. Then we're going to head out to the north branch. We'll come back and do the other part of the Y, the south branch. But right now it's where all three branches come together. This is called the confluence. Building on our left, this curved green building, pretty large. One of the older buildings, actually, on this section of the river, even though it's only been there since 1983. Designed by KPF of New York. And it's got some of that context we talked about, that green color. It's got the reflection of the river, and a curve where the river curves right there. But I will mention it's also got a claim to fame. Ferris Bueller's dad had his office in that building. Okay, so straight ahead we have River Point. Office building, it's only been there since 2017, designed by Picard Chilton. At the bottom and the top of that building, the architects call those hyperbolic cuts. I think the lower one looks like the St. Louis Arch, but, you know, what do I know? This is constructed on a platform here that was built over working railroad tracks. This is why you see these circles here. They have fans inside. The spinning fans are pushing out the exhaust from the trains that run beneath that building. We're going to talk a lot more about that down the river. Lots of buildings built over train tracks in Chicago. Again, that's River Point, and that little section, that lower section there, is a restaurant. That is Gibson's Italia, in case you're curious. Okay, straight ahead, the brick building that's got circular windows near the top is the oldest building you'll see today. It was completed in 1898, designed by Frank Abbott, and he built it for the North American Cold Storage Company. So it was basically a giant freezer. Again, 1898. But in 1981, architect Harry Weiss, who you will hear a lot about tonight, he decided that old building would be a great place to live. So he renovated it. So he had to do something to this old freezer before he did anything else, which is what you guys have to do to your freezer before you do anything else, which is defrost it. Exactly. This is bigger than your freezer, so it took 6 months to defrost. It took 500 semi-trailer trucks to get all the insulation out, and in 1898 they used matted horsehair and cork. I'm sure that smells great, right? So today it is Fulton House, and Harry Weiss actually put a marina on that building, which he did when he came back to the river. Look to your left, 4 triangular river cottages from 1988. Harry Weiss also put a marina on that building. You have to think about what this river looked like in the 1980s. It was an industrial river. It smelled. It was ugly. This architect deciding to put recreational marinas on there was a little crazy, but he had a vision. And it's thanks to people like him that we have this river that we have today. But look at the history again. Look to your right. This long, low building, when it was completed in 1979, it did not have windows on this side. And that was on purpose. Gordon and Levin were told, we don't want anyone to know that this building is on the Chicago River. It's an upscale athletic club. Those cost a lot to join. They didn't want people coming in and going, oh, this place is on the Chicago River. I'm not going there. So they had no windows until much later. That was in 1979. But look to your left. This is a gated residential community from 2002. Papa George Hames designed this community. It's Kinsey Park. And everything about this place is about enjoying the river. You've got all those rooftop decks and windows galore and patios and riverwalk, right? It's like, hey, there's the river. Isn't it great? So you can see how we went from the old industrial highway that we wanted to hide to a real amenity from the city of Chicago, and that was in about 25 years. Big difference. Chicago realized this old river that they kind of weren't too nice to for many years could be an amenity, and they started passing some ordinances. The first couple weren't so strong. Then they passed one that said, if you're going to build or renovate on the river, you have to leave a 30-foot setback for future riverwalk. Building on your right is an old warehouse that was converted to residences before that last ordinance. So they have private riverwalk patios here at Riverbank Lofts. This was a railway terminal warehouse constructed in 1909. Designed by Nimitz and Fellows. Really great loft condominium building. Actually, 2 of our river docents live in that building, so we've all had a chance to see it. Okay, this next little chunk, I'm going to not talk about a building and tell you a little bit about the man they named this park after. The park on your right was named after Aaron Montgomery Ward. Montgomery Ward was a Chicago businessman, but he invented an entire industry. He invented the mail order business. I think you guys have heard of that, right? In about 1872, he was living here in Chicago, but he realized much of our country was very rural, and the people who didn't live in a city didn't have as many things that they could buy, right? So he came up with this idea of sending a one-page catalog out to people that they could then order and have delivered to them. Now, this is a brand new idea, so a lot of people were pretty skeptical. So he came up with 2 policies, both of which you're pretty familiar with, but he thought them up. The first is COD, cash on delivery. Second one maybe was more important, satisfaction guaranteed or your money back. That helped people get the confidence to order from Montgomery Ward. He ended up with a catalog of 1,000 pages that was mailed to more than 3 million people across the U.S. Of course, he also ended up with a department store chain that was around until about 2001. That's not why we named the park after him, though. That's because he became our watchdog of the lakeshore. When Chicago was founded in 1837, our map had really great words written along the lakeshore. Forever open, clear, and free. That was a promise to the people who lived here then and to the future people that would live in Chicago. Nothing constructed along our beautiful lakeshore. We didn't want it to be obstructed at all, and we wanted it open to everybody. So that was the early 1800s, around 1837. By the end of the 1800s, you know how life goes, right? The politicians in power at the time said, oh, who remembers that silly promise? Let's start building. Well, Montgomery Ward remembered, and he had a little bit of money by then. So he financed, fought, and won 4 court cases between 1890 and 1910. Now you'd think he was a hero, right? Not so much. People accused him of trying to slow the growth of the city of Chicago, and he didn't really talk about what he was doing. He just kind of kept to himself and kept fighting. Until 1909, right before that last court case, he gave an interview to the Chicago Tribune, and he said he was fighting for the poor people, not the millionaires. And thanks to Montgomery Ward, Chicago has 26 miles of open lakeshore, and we are the envy of every other city along the Great Lakes. So as far as I'm concerned, the least we could do for the guy is give him a park with his name on it, right? The reason it's that park is because these are his buildings. So we'll talk a little more about that one that we're just passing. But the next one on your right was the old Montgomery Ward Catalog House. It's completed in 1908. Designed by Schmidt, Garden, and Martin. They were big fans of Frank Lloyd Wright, our famous prairie-style architect. So you've got a very horizontal, a prairie type of building. You got some prairie ornamentation on it, and you notice they had to punch out Riverwalk when they converted that building years ago. This building was the original catalog house, and so large. I mean, it's large now, but just imagine how large it looked in 1908. 1.2 million square feet of space. The people who worked here, largely young people, had to get around the catalog house to fill orders on roller skates. Crazy, right? We've got some pictures of that are pretty cool. So that is the old catalog house. We'll look at the other Montgomery Ward buildings in a moment. Oh, the water looks so nice right now. Okay, on your right, that is not much of anything really. That is a little man-made canal that leads nowhere. Then you see this piece of property that's been cleared off. It is called Goose Island. Goose Island has always been here. It's always been called Goose Island. Not many people knew about it for many, many years. It was just industrial. It just sat in the middle of the river. But about 30-some years ago, we started seeing those words, Goose Island, on cans and bottles and on taps, right? John Hall founded the Goose Island Brewery, and he said he was looking for a uniquely Chicago name for his beer. Found it right here in the middle of the Chicago River. Where we're looking now, this extra water here to your right, that is the continuation of the North Branch. It goes on through the city and up to through the northern suburbs. It also leads to the site of that original Goose Island Brewery. What you're looking at kind of behind us, Goose Island itself, and a little bit to your right are two new developments just starting to be developed. I told you constant change here. They leveled everything on Goose Island about the end of November when we kind of closed our river season last fall. And they're getting ready. I can see all this, the gravel is a new thing. Will be apartment buildings. So there's going to be 4 on what's called Halstead Landing. This will be Halstead Point. They're going to have a pedestrian bridge in between the two developments and a lot of presence along the river. So there will be places to sit and enjoy the river. It really sounds like it will be quite beautiful. Definitely better than what you're looking at right now, right? But what you're looking at ahead is 3 different buildings, 3 styles of architecture, all Montgomery Ward buildings. So we talked about the one on the left. The one on the right, the short one, is an Art Deco building from the Art Deco era. That one was completed in 1930. Art Deco was mostly the 20s and the 30s, designed by Willis Macaulay. He went on to design many Montgomery Ward department stores. The tall building in between the two was the last Montgomery Ward building from 1974, their last administration building, and it is now called the Montgomery. It is, just like the Macaulay building, residential today as well. The architect of the tallest building there, his name might be familiar to you because he also designed the World Trade Towers that fell on 9/11, Minoru Yamasaki. So he designed that tall Montgomery Ward administration building that today is called the Montgomery.
9/11.
Well, I told you I was going to tell you about newspaper sites, so some of them have disappeared. And this one on the right is about to as well. This is the old Chicago Tribune printing plant. They have actually moved out of the building. The printing presses have gone out to the suburbs. This building's been here since 1981. The staff of the Tribune back in that day called it Freedom Center. They named it after our precious freedom of the press. The presses ran a lot here. There were 10 of them. That's what you needed in 1981 to support a major metropolitan newspaper. Not so much anymore. So this building is soon to be knocked down. This is supposed to be the site of the new Chicago Casino, Bally's Chicago. There does seem to be some rumblings that that may not come to pass.
It's this building to the right?
Something will be here when you come through again, and it most likely will not be this building.
All right, you guys, so this is the one that they're trying to turn into a casino.
Where we came through, right? A few minutes ago. You're going to see everything you already saw. So this gives me this much time to tell you a little how we turned the river around. I told you back at the dock that all kinds of industries sprang up on the riverbanks back there, right? So what comes with industry? Industrial waste. They decided how convenient there's the river. Let's dump it there, right? To be fair, there was precedent. From the time people arrived in Chicago, they were dumping their human waste, sewage, in the river as well. So they just sort of piled on with the industrial waste. And then on the South Branch, we had a very famous stockyards. They decided to dump the animal waste into the river as well. Now that was a special kind of awful, because when animal carcasses decompose, they let off a methane gas, and that tends to create an oily surface on the river that would spontaneously bubble and burst into flame. Yeah, the people who lived here at the time said that was an affront to modern civilization, and they did not like it. Well, it was actually a lot worse than embarrassing. It was a potential health hazard, because back in those days, this gunky river was flowing this direction, the direction we're headed, and then went out to the left, to the east, to Lake Michigan, which is where Chicago did, and still does, get its drinking water. Now you see what the problem was, right? Chicago knew it had a problem. Also had another problem. They were too busy to deal with the problem. They were the fastest growing city in the world in the late 1800s. By 1880, we had 500,000 people. So they had many problems, and this was not one they could focus on. Then in 1885, we had a torrential downpour. More river water even than the past went farther into the lake, right towards where we get the drinking water. So they got scared that there would be a cholera outbreak and people would die. That woke them up. They decided, may as well fix this problem now, and they created the Chicago Sanitary District. The district had one goal: fix the problem. Now, you guys know what happens today when we find someone polluting, right? We get them to stop polluting. They handled it a little different back then. They figured all of this gunky stuff was headed to our lake. How about if we take the gunky stuff and send it somewhere else?
I know, this little green one.
Great idea, right? So they constructed a canal 300 feet wide, connecting to the river at a slope of 6 feet to draw the water to the southwest. This was the largest single earth-moving project in the history of municipal public works. Bigger than the Suez, bigger than the Panama, and it was considered the engineering marvel of the century. 28-mile canal, the sanitary and ship canal is what it was called. So everybody had all these great superlatives talking about what an engineering marvel, right? Who do you think wasn't too excited about this project when they finally heard about it?
St. Louis.
Yeah, the people who live in the southwest of us, exactly. So once St. Louis heard about this idea, and they sent their displeasure back, some time had passed. You know, communication, not so fast back in those days. So when Chicago heard that St. Louis might try to throw a wrench into the project, what do you think they did? They dug faster. They dug faster and faster and faster until January of 1900, under dark of night, they opened the temporary dam, and darn if that water didn't go down that slope out to the southwest, and we had the first river in the world to run backward. It only took a few days after that. The people walking up and down the bridges in Chicago looked down and saw something they had never seen before. There was a story in the New York Times, and you can look it up. The best headline I think I've ever seen: water in the Chicago River now resembles liquid. It was really big news. Now you might wonder about St. Louis. They did sue us, but during the court case it was discovered they were dumping their sewage in the Mississippi already, so the whole thing was thrown.
Everybody could poop in the water.
Happy ending for everybody, right? Okay, now we're going under a bridge that, if you notice, looks a little different than the other trunnion vestibule bridges, right? This one's open. This is an old railroad bridge, and as we pass, if you look over your left shoulder, you will see kind of a yellowing concrete block suspended over the roadway there on the far right as you're looking over your left shoulder. That is a counterweight. Every bridge that we've gone under has a counterweight. That's the only one you can see. The rest are buried in the riverbank. But they're trunnion bascule bridges. Bascule is a French word that means seesaw. So that's how they all work. When it's time to open the bridge tender goes into one of these cute little bridge houses that you see at the end of each of the bridges, turns on a very small motor. The motor moves the counterweight, just like when a kid sits on one side of the seesaw, right? The other side, with his weight pushing down, the other side comes up. So that is how all of our bridges work. They do open and close on a regular basis. They also sometimes open just surprisingly, I mean, not by themselves, but they do open and close mostly in April and May, and then also in September and October, and that's for the movement of the taller boats heading out to Lake Michigan slips and then back to dry dock. So you might not be seeing one right about now, but you never know. You might hear, if you're near a bridge, a little bell that sounds like a school bell. Ding! And that'll tell you that the bridge is about to open. On a day like today, that wouldn't be so bad to be standing on that bridge and end up in the river, right? The river water is much cleaner. In fact, they're holding a swim competition in the river for the first time in September. So that's pretty exciting.
I know.
Okay, look to your right. That is an amazing building that I'm going to tell you about later. But you should look at it because it is just a marvel. We call it the Martini Glass Building. It looks like a martini glass. It is built on a tiny little stem. As I said, just look at it. We'll talk about it later. I'm going to talk about the one on the left when we get under this bridge. Okay, you guys, I don't know any of you personally, but I know you're spoiled. When you guys think of a skyscraper, you think of a super tall building. If you look to your left, that was a skyscraper when it was completed in 1914. That was designed by Halliburton and Roche, and everywhere you see brick, there is steel frame behind it. Steel frame architecture was created, innovated in Chicago. Before that, they built buildings the way a kid makes an igloo, brick on brick. That does not make tall buildings, that makes very thick walls, and you can't go up too high. That new innovation, they wanted to show it off, so they put brick and said, hey, look what's back here. We came up with this wonderful idea. Now on our left, this is the kind of building you see constructed all the time, starting with a steel frame, right? This one's obviously much newer. From 2020 is when it was completed. This is the Bank of America Tower. It was designed by the same firm as the beautiful Martini Glass Building that I sort of teased you with. That is Getch Partners. Check out these three tridents that are holding up the roof of the Riverwalk. We used to have an architecture critic at the Chicago Tribune, and when this building was completed, he said that reminded him of a waiter kind of holding up a tray of food. And I just always thought that was just such a wonderful visual. That's exactly what that looks like. The beautiful Bank of America Tower, only here since 2020.
Oh, the Opera House.
On your left, we not only have a much older skyscraper, this is another example of that ordinance I mentioned early on in 1923 that creates these buildings that look like an armchair or a throne. Now, granted, this one's really wide, so it's kind of more of a love seat, right? But the Civic Opera Building was completed in 1929. It was designed by Graham Anderson, Probst, and White. The problem is it opened 6 days after the great crash, the stock market crash of 1929. Not a great time for a philanthropic entity to have its building open, and the Civic Opera did go bankrupt. Thankfully today, the Lyric Opera is there, and they're quite successful, both artistically and financially. Second largest opera facility in the country. Okay, straighten out your necks, look on the right. We have 4 buildings in a row, all part of something called Gateway Plaza. All 4 designed by the Chicago firm of Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill. But thankfully for us, they also kind of give us a timeline of the evolution of the modern building. Now these first two buildings, again, Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill, they might as well have been designed by Mies van der Rohe. They are very typical Miesian buildings. So they are steel and glass on stilts on a plaza with a recessed lobby. They are twins from 1965 and 1968. Mies van der Rohe, again, is the one that created these modern buildings, and he said his buildings had no columns in them. They were the perfect building, and the tenant could do with it what they wanted. Mies' father was a stone mason, and he really impressed upon his son. He didn't like those historic buildings with all the ornamentation. He said buildings should really just celebrate the materials with which they are constructed. And you can see that Mies really took that to heart. Mies van der Rohe was from Germany. He moved to Chicago in the 1930s to become the dean of our architecture school at what was then the Armour Institute. Today it is Illinois Tech. So good old Mies van der Rohe, he influenced several generations of architects who studied here in Chicago. Now the building here on your right that was constructed over Union Station, again, this is a little bit of an evolution. Not a lot, but a little bit. You still have a boxy looking building. You still have celebrating the materials, but in this case you've got some added material. Steel and glass and reinforced concrete. The reinforced concrete gives it a little bit of a different color too. So we're just starting to do a little bit of evolving in 1971. The next building down, this very large building after the bridge, 1983. We are on the cusp here of the postmodern movement. So now, not only is this not a complete box, it's got a curve in it. I mean, they're literally throwing you a curve here, right? And we've got a green color, different color than a lot of those early modern buildings. And if you look here, the panes of glass are kind of pinched in the corners, and it gives the building kind of a ripple effect, right? Some people call it the bubble wrap building. But it's supposed to remind you of the ripples on the Chicago River. So again, that was the beginning of that context idea right around the early 1980s. Also Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill. Okay, this next large building at the end, or on the other side of the bridge, one of my favorites. A very happy ending story. This was the old Central Post Office. It was first completed in 1921, designed by Graham Anderson Quigston Wright. But they had to add on to it because we needed the largest post office in the country. In those days, they wrapped around the taller section in 1934. Why do you think that we, and not New York, had the largest postal facility in the country?
Big yappers.
Montgomery Ward. Mail order. Then we had Sears. Then we had Spiegel. And then we had a bunch of smaller mail order houses. Everything went through this building. We didn't have FedEx back then, right? We didn't have UPS. It all went through that building. The super efficient building.
That's the jail?
Very, very large. It worked well for a long time. In 1996, however, we had barcodes, we had zip codes, we had other delivery services. This building was antiquated. It was not needed to have such a large building, and the post office up and left. They left everything behind. A lot of that stuff was just left there, all the sorting machines, all kinds of historic memorabilia in that building. And it sat there from 1996 for 2 long decades. 20 years it sat straddling that highway, that bridge we just went under. There's a highway atop that. And when people like me would drive in and look up at that building, all the windows were broken. It was having things growing out of it. It was depressing to see that western gateway of the city look like an eyesore. And not to mention the fact, we always kind of wondered if one of these days it was just going to fall right down onto that piece of property, onto the expressway. So thankfully, in 2016, finally, after many years trying, a developer was found. The 601W company out of New York, they bought the building and they spent $800 million renovating it with no promise that that would work, right? That building is 2 million square feet of space. It is a skyscraper laying down, and they turned that building into the most modern, the most amazing modern office building anywhere. It's just to go into that building and see the restoration of that original post office lobby, the Art Deco marble and brass is nothing short of miraculous. The building has been popular ever since it opened, and it opened in 2020, early 2020. And it was 96% leased. I mean, this building was a miracle all the way around. A very happy ending. I'll tell you more about it as we get closer to it again. But they have art in that building that reflects the post office. So they have walls of postcards. They have murals of zip codes. I mean, honestly, you just got to go see it. Okay, we are passing on our left a new residential development.
Right here?
It's called South Bank. But more importantly is this residential development to your left with the eyebrow windows, the curvy building called River City. It's been there since 1986, and it was designed by Bertrand Goldberg of Chicago. He is the same architect that designed Marina Towers. So you've probably seen Marina Towers, and if you haven't, you'll be seeing it in a couple of minutes. Bertrand Goldberg actually went to Germany to study under Mies van der Rohe to become an architect. He came home and he designed things like this. Now remember, Mies van der Rohe was that steel and glass box guy. So how did his well-known student design this thing? Well, Mies did not know the answer to that himself, and he wasn't too happy about it. But Bertrand Goldberg had his own thoughts. And he said there should not be right angles in architecture because there was no right angles in nature. So this was the kind of thing he liked to design. He worked in reinforced concrete. He designed many healthcare facilities across the country. Many of them were circular. He did design Marina City, and everybody said that was his favorite project, and he was obsessed with coming back to the Chicago River to design another project. He finally did that with this project, but he wanted it to be 3 times bigger. And he brought the plans to the city planning department. And they said, no. You are not going to just build something that big on the Chicago River because no one wants to live on the Chicago River. So he went ahead with the 1/3 of the size. Then he moved into the building and he lived there until he died. I just like to imagine, I know it's not likely, I'm not crazy, but I love to imagine that he's up there somewhere and he knows, or he looks down and says, ha, I was right. Look at all those people who want to live on the Chicago River. So I hope he's up there patting himself on the back a little bit. That, again, is River City. Okay, we're turning around. This is as far as we're going on the South Branch. There is a piece of property kind of behind us, kind of that way. A couple blocks back, you cannot see it, but it used to be a dairy farm. The O'Leary family owned it. That may sound familiar. You may have heard about their cow, right? She did not kick over a lantern and start a fire, they say. But that is where the Great Chicago Fire started in 1871. You know what's on that piece of property now? It's just the best. It is the training academy for the Chicago Fire Department. Perfect, right? So again, it wasn't the cow's fault. Our city council declared that a few years ago. But the fire started there. And it came this direction, and it burned right across the river. I told you about the river, right? It was not the kind of river to stop a fire in those days. It was the kind of river that would add fuel to a fire, which it did.
It had poop in it, remember, guys?
Right into the central business district. And that was decimated because everything in the downtown area was constructed of wood, including the plank sidewalk. So that was gone. Then it moved to the north, and thankfully, between the rain and the very tired firefighters, it was put out after 36 hours. So 100,000 people lost their homes, 300 people died. It was a tragedy by any estimation, right? And just like today, when these tragedies happen in various cities, people around the world hear about it. The media gets the information out. Back in those days, it was like radio and newspapers. And we had outpourings from people across the world that felt terrible for the city of Chicago. They sent condolences, they sent gifts. There was one group of people out there who had a little different reaction to this calamity. They were architects. They said, I think I'm going to move to Chicago.
This building,
I
I
have
don't
a
like
feeling
it.
I can find work there. And they did. So architects flocked to Chicago, and when they got here, they did a lot of that innovating that we've talked about. They created the steel frame. They also worked in some fireproof materials because the city council said no more wood in the central business district. So they often used terracotta, burnt earth, which was fireproof, on many of our early buildings. So all of that innovation, all those years, helped those architects create what's in front of you. That tall, black rectangle with the two antennas, that, when it was completed, was called the Sears Tower in 1974. I remember it well. The city was so excited because we had the tallest building in the world, a little over 100 stories. Very exciting, the most famous building in the world. Now, things, as I said, change constantly on the Chicago River. The name of that building today is the Willis Tower. That was a naming rights thing. And it has a different title. It is now the tallest building in Chicago. That's okay. We're okay with that. We still love it. But the building in front of it, the one that's got the lights on right now, the circle, that one was being designed in the late 1980s. It was completed in 1990. But in the late 1980s, when they were designing that building, the Willis Tower was still the most famous building in the world. So just imagine that somebody gave you an assignment and you're working at KPF in New York, and they said, okay, you got to design a building for us on the river in Chicago. Oh, by the way, it's going to sit right next to the most famous building in the world, so no pressure. Good luck. See ya. Now, maybe you would have done what they did. Next to a tall black rectangle, they designed a shorter pink octagon coming out of a triangle. Next to a tall building with windows of all the exact same shape and size, they designed a building with windows kind of all over the place. And to make sure people notice their shorter building, they put 1,800 fluorescent light bulbs on the top of that building. Now, it's not quite dark yet, but when it gets dark, you look this direction, and I guarantee you, no matter where you are downtown, you will see that building. Now, an architect will say that those two buildings are the perfect juxtaposition of a modern building, the Willis, and a postmodern building, 311 South Wacker. I, of course, am not an architect or writer, and I think they look like a really cute couple. I mean, think about it. You've got tall, dark, and handsome. Noisy, sorry. You got Mr. Tall, dark, and handsome in a classic black tux, right? The one everybody has. Right next door, you have his wife. She's wearing a bit of a trickier number. She's got a lot of jewelry up top. And their kid is next door. Just look at that building to your right with the geometric. You can tell that's their kid, because when they left for school, they left all the dresser drawers pulled out. Was that rude or what? Just like a kid. So I like to think of these three as a little family here on the south branch of the river. You got another view here on your right of that beautiful restored post office. See all the names of those companies that moved into the building? You also see this lower rooftop. There is a park up there is nearly 3 acres. It has pickleball courts. It has basketball. It has a running track. It has a walking area. It's got beautiful gardens. I mean, honestly, that building, if you have a chance, we have tours there on Tuesday mornings. You can look it up, theoldpostoffice.com, or you can eat. They have a what they call now a food hall in that building, and it's actually very good. You can see the entire lobby, the old post office lobby. So I highly recommend that you check out that building. Now this one here on the right is a typical modern building, but it's got some cool design on it, right? That red thing is just like what you see at the mall. When you look at the directory, you are here, that's where you are. And that painting is the Chicago River. Nobody used to talk about that building before they added that little design to these sides. The Architecture Center has a motto, like most nonprofits, and ours is to help people discover why design matters. That's just one little example. Everybody was looking up there, right, at that little red piece. Don't tell us that design doesn't matter. Okay, look to your left. You're not going to see anything yet, but a couple down here, you're going to start seeing trains. So I told you earlier that a lot of Chicago buildings are constructed over working railroad tracks. So that started in the 1950s. Civil engineers here figured out that they could put down columns or caissons between the working railroad tracks. Then they built a platform, then they constructed a building, right? So the buildings here do not own the land that they sit on. They lease the air rights from the railroads. That works over a lot of places in Chicago. Millennium Park, for example, built over working railroad tracks. Chicago has almost half of the freight traffic, the train freight, in the entire country.
Here's
So
the
we have a
trains
lot of
there, you
railroad
guys.
tracks. So it's really good that we figured out how to build buildings over these tracks. But occasionally, as you'll see in a moment ahead of us, there are places where it doesn't work. So if you look ahead in the distance a little bit, you'll see a white clock. It says Intelsat under it, and right next to it, you'll see some open truss work. That is the lower portion of the Boeing building. That section happened to sit right where the tracks curve. So 1/3 of that lower section of the building could not be held from underneath because the railroad tracks were in the way. So they innovated again. They cantilevered out from the tall part of the Boeing building, just like what I would do if I put out my arm parallel to the ground from my shoulder, and then hold with my fist, whatever, a purse or a briefcase or something, right? So that's what they're doing straight ahead. They are holding up part of that lower section from the top. Then, of course, just like some other things I showed you, they left that truss work open to brag about it a little and say, look what we're doing here. Wasn't that smart? Pretty cool. Okay, we're going to talk about the rest of the Boeing building in a minute, but to our left is another newspaper building. That building was constructed in 1929. Designed by Hallberg and Root. It is an Art Deco building. If you go in where this first clock is, where it says 2 North Riverside, beautiful Art Deco renovation in there. That is open to the public. There's some little shops in there. But the building was constructed for the Chicago Daily News in 1929. And it was one of the most popular papers in the city at the time. Has that beautiful plaza constructed over the railroad tracks there, the first public plaza on a private building in the city. The Chicago Daily News was an afternoon newspaper. Anybody remember those? And it closed in 1978. Now that building mostly has offices inside of it. Okay, we're going to look at the rest of the Boeing building here on your left. Boeing building has been here since 1990. It was designed by Perkins and Will. If you look you'll see the flags there on your left. And as all the flags are in a row, look at the very end of the flags, and you're going to see an awning constructed over the door to this building. That awning holds the address of the building, and it also is designed to look like a drawbridge right next to a drawbridge. Just another one of those little pieces of context that these architects do since the postmodern era. What a great little kind of human level wink, right? And now on our left is the building I've been teasing about for a while. It's got a boring name, that's why we call it the Martini Glass Building, but it's only 150 North Riverside. The neat thing about this building is the base, right? It looks like a martini glass. It was constructed on a strip of land not even 40 feet wide. On the other side of that little strip of land is the railroad tracks. On this side, of course, is the river. They had this little strip, and for many, many years, they built nothing there because they didn't think they could. Then they went and constructed this in 2018. When it was being constructed, I often walked on Randolph, and I would look as this building was being built, and I think, how is it going to stand up? It's got that little base. Look how tall. Well, they're much smarter than me, and these structural engineers figured out a way. It is called a tuned liquid mass damper. You can't see it, but it's on the top of the building, and it's basically a giant bathtub holding hundreds of thousands of gallons of water. So when the wind pushes the building one direction, tries to make it move, the water in that bathtub sloshes the other direction and steadies the building. They won a structural engineering award for that in 2018. I like to believe that that was the most deserved award ever awarded. I mean, we all go to awards things, right? Whether it's for our little kids or for movie stars or whatever, and you always go, oh, no, they shouldn't have won. And that one really should have won. So that was a big one. Now, turn around and just look at that building and how it defies gravity and how beautiful it is right there on the corner of this confluence here of Wolf Point. I mean, it truly is a marvel. And like I said, it's only been here since 2018, so not very long. And all these buildings that you look at this direction are all fairly new. But now look straight ahead and you'll see the only old building right here. The one that is 2.5 city blocks wide. Proudly Art Deco. It's got those beautiful copper diamonds on it. It's got zigzags galore. Those are all
used to work there, Mom, right?
Of an Art Deco building.
Okay.
That is the Merchandise Mart. These days they're calling it the Mart. It was constructed in 1930, designed by Graham Anderson, Probst and White for the Marshall Field Company. It was a warehouse for retail. 1930, not a great year for retail, right? So they had to sell the building. But I want to tell you about those green heads that are on the pedestals. Remember back at the dock, I told you we pride ourselves on telling you only factual things about Chicago. So I do have to tell you that despite what David Letterman tried to tell everybody a few years ago, these are not the Pez Dispenser Hall of Fame. I promise. They are actually busts of famous merchandisers, and they are said to be minding the store. That's why they're looking at the Merchandise Mart. And if you go over there and like to walk over there, you'll see plaques for each of them. The Merchandise Mart is home to 1871. You'll remember that's the year of our Great Fire. It's also the name of the high-tech startup incubator in that building. It's been very, very successful in nurturing high-tech startups. Okay, straight ahead, a little to your left where it says Whirlpool and you see a clock. I really love that building. It's called the Reed Murdoch Building because Reed Murdoch was a grocery warehouse. That's what the building was constructed for back in 1910. It was designed by Nimmons.
So
and
gorgeous.
This was really the kind of building you saw along the river. You don't see many of them anymore, but this was the type of building you see. and it has been lovingly restored by the Friedman companies. And it looks a lot like it did for a while. It was the traffic court in the city of Chicago. These days, it just has offices in that building. You realize one of the reasons that a lot of our old buildings had clocks on them is because watches were very expensive back in the day. Not everybody had a watch. So people who were in the city and they needed to get to work on time, they relied on buildings like this that had a clock on them. That's why you
trying not to spill this wine in my lap again.
Okay, we are coming up on.
You guys, I spilled my entire wine in my crotch when I was moving the camera, and it looks like I peed my pants.
Buildings. That is Marina Towers, one of the two towers. You'll see the other one in a moment. Bertrand Goldberg, again, was a Chicagoan. He had kind of he was a social visionary. He worried that a lot of the people in the 1950s who were
Maybe I
coming
should
into
just
Chicago
poop in the river like we've learned on the tour.
and then they took the train home to the suburbs. He was worried that the city would die if people didn't live here. So he came up with this idea. It's a city within a city complex. Marina City, the two towers were completed in 62 and 63. The rest of Marina City by 1968. They
used to work out right here,
a
right?
theater, you now see the House of Blues. They had places to work out, a grocery store, even a marina underneath the building. They even very prominently showed you can park your car here. Everything you have in the suburbs, you can have right here in downtown Chicago. It was very popular from the very beginning, to the point where it was an iconic building. If you saw a movie or TV show set in Chicago in those, I'd say during the 70s.
Okay, here's the
80s,
Marina Towers.
This was the establishment shop, and you knew you were in Chicago. Each of the first apartments, now condos, are actually triangular shaped. And the cars, that you might wonder about, are only parked by valets. Not a lot of worries about cars ending up in the river. But if you want to see a car end up in the river, you can do that online. The Allstate company constructed. Very nice thing.
The Trump building right here. It's your favorite
Now this building
building.
on the left mentioned earlier, I know it's hard to read the name because the letters are kind of small. So if you
MAGA.
squint, I promise
MAGA.
you'll be able to make them out. The building was
That's my
designed
guy.
by Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill. It was completed in 2009, and it is the second tallest building in Chicago. This building has such wonderful context. Each of those setbacks where you see the vents, they relate to a nearby historic building. So the lowest one, same height as the Wrigley building. The next one up, same height as Marina Towers. The next one up, same height as that AMA Plaza, the Mies van der Rohe building. Kind of hard to see right here because of perspective, right? We're going to get to the end of the river, 5 minutes or so. We'll turn around.
The stream went out and came back in on Trump's building. God damn it.
Beautifully lines up with its historic neighbors. Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill did just a beautiful job. Okay, on our left, you're going to see the Apple Store again. But look behind the Apple Store, the tall building with the flag on the top. See the lights. And those little bridge-like structures, those are called flying buttresses. That was the old Chicago Tribune Tower. It was completed in 1925, designed by Howells and Hood, and it was a design chosen by publisher Colonel Robert McCormick. He had a design contest, almost 300 entries, international architects, and he chose that because he wanted the most beautiful building in the world. That's the design he picked. The Tribune's staff moved out of that building. It was probably about 2017 or so. And the building about 2 years ago became Tribune Tower Residences. It is now a condominium complex. Now I can say that all the way through without my voice cracking. So we're moving in the right direction. Okay, this building that's got those pretty colors on the top and that little spire, of course that's NBC Towers, right? You see the peacock? It's been there since 1989. The little bridges that you see coming off the middle of the building, those are a shout out to the flying buttresses on the Chicago Tribune Tower. But in this case, we have a double shout out. Not only are they saying, hey Trib, we know you guys have those too. Also, this building looks like the NBC Tower in New York, 30 Rock. 30 Rock in New York was designed by Raymond Hood, one of the architects of the Tribune Tower. Now, we've got lots of little kind of nudges from one architect to the next. They're very,
We got a 4% battery.
Okay, this bridge we're going under is our newest Trent-Basville Bridge. Like everything else, new is relative, 1982. And what you have here on the right is either the oldest section of our Riverwalk or the newest, depending on your perspective. We have had kind of a sidewalk here for the last 20 years or so, from Lakeshore Drive down to State Street. There wasn't really anything here. There weren't even very many buildings here early on. It was just kind of a sidewalk. Our Riverwalk was constructed between 2015 and 2016.
So good.
3 blocks each from State Street down to Lake.
We're almost
Designed
done,
by Chicago architect
I could make it.
Carol Ross Barney. It was immediately successful. It drew people by the thousands. And let me tell you, nobody thought that was going to happen. The idea of putting a Riverwalk along the Chicago River that had such a long, bad history was kind of met with eye rolls and laughs. We had a mayor at the time who said, this is the next recreational frontier, and everybody kind of went, yeah, maybe. So he was right. Carol Ross Barney was right. And because it was so successful, they realized this old section needed a boost. So about, I'd say starting around 2021, the last couple of years, they completely revamped this whole section from Lakeshore Drive down to State Street, and now it's as lovely as the 2 newer sections, the 6 blocks that go to the west. For me, there is no better place to spend some time. It's completely free. Take a little over a mile walk from Lakeshore Drive down to Lake Street or vice versa. You're going to pass restaurants, places to have a drink, places to just sit and
I'm
relax.
stupid. I should have brought my charger.
Gelato shop. It's just one of the greatest places in the city of Chicago. Again, you're right where the city started. You're right in the heart of the city, and it really has become just a phenomenon that is hard to imagine if, and I get people who come up and tell me this, who worked here in the 80s or haven't been here since the 90s, and they said, I would never have imagined that this would happen. Well, thanks to the architects and the city planners and the architect of the Riverwalk itself, we have this today. Another new project, look at your left and you're going to see a crane. We haven't seen a lot of cranes lately because we had a lot of building for a lot of years. But that is another new development. That's going to be 2 residential towers. The plans we've seen are beautiful, like a neat stair-step design at the top. They will be apartments. 400 Lakeshore Drive is the name of it right now. They are working hard, mostly below ground right now. and maybe by next year we'll start seeing something above ground. But look at the black building on the other side of this bridge. The little kind of wavy building, steel and glass on stilts.
Oh, okay, right there.
On the plaza. But the
My mom's friend used to live there.
It's not a box, right? So that is ease with a twist.
Show behind us. So
The building is Lake Point Tower. It was designed by two of these Vanderbilt students. I always wonder if they missed the day he said, I like boxes. But Lake Point Tower was completed in 1968. It was the tallest all-residential building in the entire world at the time. It's about 70 stories high. But remember what I told you guys, forever open, clear, and free, right? We should not have that building there. So what happened is there was kind of a little exception for this particular area, which is the mouth of the river, in case someday they needed harbor improvements. Somehow, the developer of that building pulled that whole building through that little tiny loophole, and then they closed the loophole. So that is the only building on this side. Oh,
just get the whole city.
Nice, huh? On the only side of Lakeshore Drive. Because of that, you can only imagine the views in that building, right? But I'm pretty lucky because I don't have to imagine them. I don't live there, but my dad does. So I get to look out the windows pretty often. One thing we like to look at is straight ahead. You can see some lights. There's a red light, a white light. You can kind of see a little curved structure straight ahead. You'll see it better in a moment. That's the end of our river story. Now, the last thing I told you was we turned the river around, right? So what do you think happened after the river was no longer flowing into the lake? The lake started flowing into the river. We were okay with that. Didn't bother Chicago a bit. But it started to bother our neighbors along Lake Michigan to the north. And they said, excuse me, Chicago, you're draining our lake. And we said, oh, come on, what's a few inches a year among friends? Surprisingly, they didn't go for that, and they took us to court. They wanted us to turn the river around again, but instead, thankfully, a compromise was reached, and that's the compromise. That is the harbor locks designed and installed by the Army Corps of Engineers, and it keeps the two bodies of water largely separate. So another happy ending for the river. Now you guys are way ahead of me here. Enjoy that beautiful view, and I'll even let you enjoy it in peace for a few minutes.
Okay, I'm going to put you guys down.
I love the light that falls on the sea in the south.
When you come out here in November and feel the lake, it's a little less pleasant than it is tonight. This is pretty great.
It's a perfect night. So perfect. Gosh, I love this city. I love it. Honestly, best city in the world. It's the greatest city
Not a bad
in the
skyline,
world. Not bad at all. Look at the moon. You guys see the moon? See it? Bringing Chicago to you if you can't ever make it here. Well, here you go. Although I do hope you make it here one day. I love this city. I love it so much. Here, Liz, go by the railing. I don't have my camera, but I want. I know. This looks like we're in a movie. Oh my god, your life is a movie? You look slay. The quality of this camera is so good. It's worth lugging it around. It's worth lugging it around.
The back of that city, or like that part of the city, is so cool.
It's insane.
I know. I don't know if the camera captures it.
This is maybe
You can definitely see
right
it.
now,
And
guys. It's been there since 1916. It's got a Ferris wheel. because we have the first Ferris wheel in the world in Chicago.
God, I'll never get sick of this view. I will never get sick of it.
Chicago. That's because our World's Fair in 1893 is where we debuted the Ferris wheel.
Are you reading chat?
Unveiled the Eiffel Tower before our World's Fair. Of course, you know.
You want to say something?
I just want to say I've been on this tour many times.
Can you outdo Eiffel?
I've been on it many times, and I'm in the city all the time, but each time it's
that's a
an
new
amazing experience. You can never get tired of it.
Yeah.
It's
You learn
fantastic.
something new every time?
You do. I learn something new.
Did you know about the poop in the water?
Yeah.
Okay.
But there's just, it's just so beautiful. There's just,
I told
it's the
my-
most beautiful city in the world.
I told the team there was going to be a test.
The one that's kind of curvy, three towers together.
I said there's going to be a test afterwards, so I hope you're paying attention.
We'll see that a little bit closer in a moment.
So that's Navy Pier, you guys. That is Navy. And then that's the moon.
Anyone been to Navy Pier?
Yeah.
Top tourist attraction in the city and the state.
I just cannot get over this
Millennium
view.
Park, I think, knocked it off its pedestal there. But it is a fun place to go.
Ah, there's such a nice breeze right now.
Three-pronged building
Oh,
on your
it's
left
perfect.
and straight ahead.
So
That is the St. Regis Chicago, named after the hotel.
So happy.
Designed
I hope my
by
phone doesn't die,
Studio
but-
Gang Architects in Chicago. Principal architect Jeannie Gang. Jeannie Gang tells us the shape of those towers was inspired by old-fashioned popcorn boxes. So think about the ones that are square at the bottom and they flare up a little bit, right? So it was a right side up popcorn box and upside down popcorn box. A right side up popcorn box and upside down popcorn box.
I like that everyone stood up once we got to that part.
Favored the idea. A little harder to tell right now, but that building is chased. Just a moment. The building uses 6 different colors of blue glass. So like I said, not real obvious tonight, but if you see the building and the rest of your trip, you'll notice it's just really got beautiful colors.
My mom wants you guys to know she's been to parties.
Really kind of make the building feel like
She's been to
that.
parties up in the
Those
penthouse
curves
of
are
that
actually
building.
moving. If you look at the very tallest tower,
I show.
which by the way is the third
Mom is
tallest
cooler than
structure
all
in
of us.
Chicago.
She's been to parties
Look
up
at the
there.
top, about 10 stories down, it
says-
looks like maybe they forgot to finish that building, right? That's called a blow-through floor. Architects use that to help curtail sway, just like we talked with the tune liquid mass damper. And a blow-through floor is nothing new, but it is
Okay.
new for us. We don't have
So you
another
enter
building
in St.
Chicago with
Regis
a
and they got
blow-through
the penthouse
floor.
in the top.
That was kind of a nice thing for us to see happen here on the river. This little section in the front that you see kind of attached to the complex. Complex, by the way, St. Regis after the hotel, but it also has condominiums in the building. And that
isn't
little
this just-
structure
aren't
that's
these
almost
buildings
got an
so
outline
sexy?
of those popcorn boxes on it.
This view
That
is so
where
sexy.
the
Love
restaurants
it.
and
So
banquet
gorgeous.
facilities are in the building. Actually, my daughter just had
Also,
dinner
this
there,
tour
and she
guide
said
is
the Italian
amazing.
restaurant was excellent.
How does she keep saying
Again,
things?
I'm a volunteer. I don't get kickbacks. So I'm just telling you. And the St. Regis is one of the most expensive hotels in the city. And the condos, pretty expensive as well. The most we've seen
my
was
favorite
one of them
spot
went
in
for about
Chicago?
$8 million.
Oh.
They're also the tallest ones in the city on the 92nd and 93rd floors.
Probably the river.
Okay, another
like
building
this
I want to
area.
show you.
I
One
love
last
it.
building on our left.
I just
You'll
love
see a
being
building
surrounded
coming
by
towards us
all the buildings.
To a point.
I love the lake
Triangular
too.
building. It's the Swiss Hotel. You'll see the name as we pass it. Designed by Harry Weeks.
I'm asexual. I
The
can
same guy that
confirm those are
designed
objectively
triangular
sexy
river
buildings.
cottages
Yes.
on the north branch of the river. He said the reason that hotel has to be a triangle is because then more of the hotel rooms would have a view
Okay,
of the
so
river.
this one right here.
But you gotta stop and think. This building was completed in 1988.
This.
Nothing you see on the right
This is
was
a triangle.
I worked in this area in the early 90s, and all I walked past was empty parking lots in those days. So again, he had a vision. There was nothing to look at, but he believed that someday this river would be worth enjoying. And it's thanks to people like Harry Weiss and their vision.
My favorite
that we
spot
have
is the
what
Trump
we have
Hotel.
here today.
Hell yeah, brother.
Okay, we are headed back
So
to the
cool.
dock in the next couple of minutes.
No.
I'm going to ask everybody to take a seat. The captain prefers that everybody stay seated until he tells
Although I
you
have
to
2%
stand
on
once
my
we are
phone,
completely
so
docked.
probably for the
Takes a little longer than you would imagine. So even though I'm talking, trust me, you can't get off yet anyway. So, if you all sit down, you would appreciate that.
Coming.
Okay, so I get asked
There he
a lot,
is,
so I'd like
my
to
king.
tell you guys at the end of our tour. I get asked,
My
like,
king.
why do those of us come out here and volunteer? Well, for me, again, I grew up in Chicago. My grandmother was born in Chicago in 1901. She died in Chicago in 1999. She never left the city. She never learned to drive. She took the L and buses everywhere, and trust me, she went everywhere. She had 4 grandkids, 3 boys and me. So I was the one that got to go a lot of places with her. And we explored everywhere in the city. She was a lot of fun to be with. We never went to the Chicago River because there was nothing at the Chicago River. So a few years back, I moved away. I came back. My dad said, you should take a kayak out on the Chicago River. I think the first thing I said was, where's that? And then I said, who kayaks in a city? Everybody kayaks in the wilderness, right? That's what kayaks are for. That's where I learned how to canoe and kayak. He said, just try it. Eventually I listened to him. And as I canoed and kayaked down this skyscraper canyon, I looked around and I thought, this is not really the city I remember running around with as a kid. Things have changed here big time. And I wanted to learn more about the city I was born in. So eventually, I took the training course that they give us to become a river docent about 11 years ago. And they
Bring kayak
really
to
give us
Chicago.
great information.
Noted.
We have lecturers from all the greatest universities here in Chicago. We learn a ton. And of course, we all believe every word, right? We have the greatest architecture in the world.
Hell yeah, brother.
But I gotta say, after all these years out here on the river, I look around here a lot of times and I think maybe the greatest design achievement in Chicago is actually this river itself. The transformation, the beauty, all the people who came together to create this wonderful river in the heart of the city is a little overwhelming. And I'm always glad that there's boatloads of people who come out to see the Chicago River because it would be such a shame if you missed it. It's such a big part of the city. As I said earlier, it's where the city started. So I'm always happy to take people out here, and I love being out here. So that's why I come out here. I'm going to finish with 3 quick things. Little housekeeping items, and again, you gotta sit still. Takes a few minutes anyway. First thing is, I told you at the beginning, my name is Joni, and I'm a volunteer, right?
I have
Volunteers do not
1%
take
battery
tips.
left.
I do not take tips. Got it? On the other hand, all of us docents love reviews. So if you have a minute, use the QR code on the back of the brochure, leave a review on Yelp or TrustAdvisor. We all really appreciate it. Our nonprofit needs it. We don't really have much of an
I'll
advertising.
see you guys tomorrow in LA.
Please leave a
Gotta
review
go
if you are
before
so
my
moved
phone
and tell other people
takes a shit
what
and
you
I
like
can't end
about
stream.
Chicago's First Lady.
I hope you enjoyed
Last
the
thing
tour.
is, I'll be on the dock answering questions until all of you are gone. I'm happy to do that. I'll just
the
be right
best.
out there. I will not be taking tips.
Smartest.
I'll just be giving some tips if anybody has questions or suggestions on where to have dinner or whatever. So I'm happy to answer that for you.
Heck yeah.
Please use your ticket to consider going to the Chicago Architecture Center. It's going to be hot out tomorrow.
Bye, guys.
Air conditioned in
I
there.
hope you
Your
enjoyed
ticket gives you a
Chicago.
discount for a week.
It's my
So
favorite
if you
city.
like architecture from around
my
the world,
home,
not
and I'm
just
glad I got to
Chicago,
show it to
go on in
you.
there.
I'll
If
see you.
wanna see
I'll see
other
you
buildings
tomorrow in
Chicago,
LA.
not on the river,
Normal stream
go on
time.
in there. If you like to shop, it has great gift shops.
Okay.
So thank you
Is Will
very
live
much
yet?
again.
I'm just gonna send you
Please
guys
wait
there
for
anyway.
the captain to clear you off. But
Even if
thank
he's
you
not,
all for
you
your
can
time
go
and
hang
attention.
out.
Have a wonderful
Okay, I gotta end stream. Phone, please don't die. Oh God. Oh gosh. Oh my gosh, please don't die. Okay, end stream, please. I have 1% battery. If I can't end this, stop. Thank you so much. That was amazing.
Very well. Shoot, video. She's doing like a vlogging thing, so everyone's watching
yeah.
this world right now. Oh, hi. Okay. Well.
Okay, wait, my phone
And
is
they're
dead.
loving it because they're on their live streaming saying, well, thank you. You're the star of the show. Well, I'm glad you didn't tell me that at the beginning.
You were amazing. Thank you so much. It was very informative.
Really. Your volunteerism. I appreciate it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's now safe to stand, disembark the vessel. Please watch yourself. Have a wonderful night. Make sure that you have all your trash and all your personal possessions with you. I get something new every ride. Don't let my new thing be your thing.
I'm
Enjoy the rest of your time in Chicago for as long as you're here. And if you live here, I really hope you enjoy the rest of the time in Chicago. And on behalf of myself and the rest of the crew, we'd like to thank you once again for choosing Chicago's First Ladies tonight. Have a lovely rest of your evening. Hopefully we see you again soon. Also, folks, we have the upper gate open. Folks in that...
Isn't the raid still going?
We do have the upper gate open. I think we need to move that camera.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah. Let me move this out of the way.
No worries, guys. No worries. You can alternatively go up the upper ramp if you're on the upper deck. We also have two different staircases, so if it does get congested on the side, we make your meters. There are two staircases on the other side of the boat. You can go down through the salon
Okay, I have to figure out
or
how
around the
to
bow, back from once you came on the bow. Thank you so much for joining us once again.
Okay, everyone leave.
Feel free to use any of our exits, whatever is most convenient.
You want to just tell
Once
them
again,
Oh, I think
this is not the only exit
No, not the
yes, you have other options.
No, not the people here.
Cheat code to get ahead in line. Sorry folks, if you're already here, I can't do anything for you, but everyone else, there's still time. Take care, everyone.
No, I'm talking to my community. I'm like, everyone go. Stream is over.
So do they enjoy it?
Yeah, they enjoy it, but my phone just died, so I can't end the stream. So that's why I told them, I was like, be gone. Everyone go to Will's stream. I'm going to have to log onto your phone. I don't know how I see. This is what I get. Yeah, some people have left. Good. Goodbye. The stream is over. You're still, I'm doing the Ferris Bueller. You're still here? It's over. Go home.
How many were watching at the time?
I don't know.
So they refused to leave.
No, you guys. It's done.
It's over. And credits.
Yeah, this is like the last Lord of the Rings where there's 7 endings. Now I already got the boat, so now Samwise is getting married. Oh my god. Okay, wait. For a second. I need to... Oh, crap. I don't have my login. Okay, let's get up. Let's do this. Let's get up. We get up. I'm gonna at least turn the camera off.
I think we should go to
Goodbye, everyone.
or have a bite.
Yeah, I would get some dinner.
Go.
Wherever you go, right?
Go.
Oh, like by me,
Okay.
like at a restaurant by me.